Good night, hi everyone. It's going to be in English tonight. It was requested I speak in English because it's more clear when I speak in English. So tonight we will have a short conversation about 212, what happened in the last 2 years, no, 3 years actually for me. How it all came together, what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and some of our investments. Actually, all of our investments, we made 3 of them. And then I'm planning that this will take about 15 minutes or so. The actual plan is that you ask questions. I'm sure you have some questions. Please have questions, so I feel important. So that's the plan. Let's have a quick show of hands. How many of you would ever consider running a marathon? Running a marathon. It's always the same distance. That's it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So we are about, what, 200 people here? Okay, not bad. Okay. So I'll come back to this topic. I'm just going to start talking about myself, what happened with me, and we'll start with that. Does this work? It's not working. There you go. Okay. So I left Turkey in 1995 to go studying in the US. I was away for 13 years in total. My first job was with Arthur Andersen, doing M&A in technology, media, and telecommunications, mainly on the sell side type of deals, private equity, and that type of deal. Then that was actually the height of the bubble in the US, and as you know, in 2001, 9/11 happened, which was terrible. In 2002, Enron happened, right? I don't know if you know Enron. Enron was pretty much the client that brought down Arthur Andersen. After that, I joined Morgan Stanley, which is also a bank. I was working for Morgan Stanley Capital International, and I was mainly responsible for their finances, for their investments, for principal investments, it's called. I was in charge of analyzing what's happening, looking at new targets, integrating new targets after they're bought, and that sort of thing. I did that for 3 years in New York, and then I said it's time to go back to the European continent, so I moved to London, still with Morgan Stanley. After 5 years with Morgan Stanley, I said it's enough for me. I should start doing something different. I should scare myself. That was actually the term I used when I quit, and I quit. And it was 2007, which was great timing, because it was the beginning of the financial crisis, and I joined Deutsche Bank at the height of financial crisis in their principal investments group. That's the group again that oversees Deutsche Bank's own investments. And since the crisis was already there in Europe, they said you are going to Singapore. Even though I don't have that in the slide, I guess, because I don't like Singapore that much. So I went to Singapore a couple of months, came back in 2008, and I was laid off. So after 13 years, I started looking at myself, what I wanted to do next. And after a couple of months in London looking for a job, I said, after 13 years, maybe it's time to go back to Turkey. And that's what I did. It was a very interesting time for me, because I came back after 13 years, was with my family again, with my old friends. And I thought that it was time to make a decision. And I decided that I didn't want to work for someone else again. It was very hard for a man who's used to getting a paycheck and a nice bonus at the end of the year. And, but that was my decision, and I stuck to it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I had to do something that has to do with finance, because that's what I knew. I love Excel sheets. That's how I function, with numbers and Excel sheets. I didn't know what, so I did a couple of pitches. I thought of a couple of startups myself. And I started consulting clients on a freelance basis, so I could actually feed myself. But my decision was clear. I didn't want to work for someone else. One day, Melih Ödemiş called me. He's the founder of Yemek Sepeti, that some of you might know. And he said, tomorrow there's a meeting. It's called Etohum. It's on a Saturday morning, so I cursed. And he said, you should come, okay? And I went to my first Etohum meeting. It was in the Istanbul Technical University. And I went and I saw the pitches, and I think it was, again, the top 15 or the top 40 announcement from Etohum. And I was very impressed, and I felt something, and I felt that I could be really useful to these companies. I said, these guys are great, they have passion, they have energy, they have, everything that you need for a successful company, but they don't understand finance, or they don't know what an investor wants from a company. So I talked to Burak. He was more than welcome. He was very helpful. And I said, I would like to work with these companies. And on, I think, Valentine's Day, 2009, that morning was my first Etohum session with a couple of entrepreneurs, and I talked them through, what an investor wants in a company. So that kind of went on. I kept on working with entrepreneurs. About a year later, again in an Etohum event, I met Numan. Yeah, he wasn't wearing these glasses back then. And again, it was an Etohum event. We got to talk. And the second we started talking, something happened because we had similar backgrounds. Numan spent more than 20 years of his life in Japan and then in New York. Is this working? It's not working. There you go. Okay. And what he did was he started, I think, with a small company, then Dun & Bradstreet in Tokyo. Then he joined Credit Suisse, and then he was in Goldman. He spent the last 9 years of his career with Goldman. No, 13, 9 in New York, 4 in Tokyo. And what was different with him is he's not a finance guy. He's a geek, actually, as you could tell from the previous picture. And he understands technology a lot better than I do. And what he was doing at Goldman was he was working with their venture team investing in technology companies. He wasn't just doing that, he was also testing new technologies. He's one of the first users of BlackBerry, actually. And he has all of the BlackBerries from the first day until the recent ones, until he switched to iPhone. And so he was working with the venture capital team. He was part of their technology core competency team. And then he moved to New York. He was still part of their venture capital team investing. And after 2008, with the banking crisis, Numan saw that there was something going on, and Goldman decided that they would raise the investment levels for venture capital investing. It came to, I think, 50 million minimum. So it was no longer startups. And he said, it's enough for me. And he was kind of in the same spot as I was. It was a decision time for him, and he quit. He quit because he wanted to work with startups. He spent the next 2 years working with startups in the US, in Estonia, in Europe, in different places, working with them, helping them, raising funds, and all that kind of stuff. And then he moved to Turkey because he saw the startup scene in Turkey. He was very impressed by that, and he said, there's a big vacuum here that I can fill. I'm going to move to Turkey. He took his family. He moved to Turkey beginning of 2010. And that's actually exactly when we met. What happened then was, it's not happening. There you go. We started talking. Our first meeting was actually our first initial meeting. Can I tell them? Our first meeting was in Aşk Cafe. It's called Love Cafe. It's a very romantic place. I don't know why I chose that place. But that's where our love started. And we kept on talking and talking and talking. And first we said it should be an incubation fund, an incubation center rather. Something like Y Combinator. We should set up a place. It should be a nice big loft. We should put the entrepreneurs in there. We should train them. We should get them funding, blah, blah, blah. Then we said, you know what? These guys don't need, we saw that incubation centers were already starting in Turkey. And we said there are not enough of them, but what they don't have is the capital, actually. There is no access to capital in Turkey. There is access to private equity in Turkey. There is access to monies above 5 million in Turkey. But there's a big vacuum between, say, $250,000 and $5 million. And we said we should fill that gap. And that's how 212 started. Why is it called 212? I think it was Numan's idea, because I think it had to do with New York, Istanbul, 212. It's something techie sounding, so we said 212. It was easy enough to say. And that's how 212 started. So this was June of 2010. It took us exactly 18 months to raise the fund. We made more than 50 pitches to investors. I counted the other day, we had 36 different versions of our pitch book. And it's kind of interesting because I said previously I didn't want to be on the sell side again. I wanted to be on the buy side. I wanted to be investing. And then I saw, like, it was a big waking up for me. And whatever you do in life, you're always on the sell side, right? Because even if you want to invest, you still want to attract investors. You are selling yourself. You are saying, give me your money, trust me. And so that was very humbling, especially in, trying to, you go to people, you ask for money, they ask you what venture capital is. So you start, you go going through that process. It was a very tough 18 months. And it was especially tough for us because here you have two guys coming from banks who made decent salaries in their previous lives. They are in Istanbul now, not making any money. And so it was very, very challenging for both of us, I think. And I think harder for Numan maybe because he also has a family to support. I'm just myself. So it was very hard for me, so I can't imagine how hard it was for him. So end of December 2011, 212 started. I think it was the first week of December in 2011. And so we are almost active for two months now, 2.5 months or so. So that's the 212's foundation story. That's how everything happened. What happened then? I thought I would take a break and go for a vacation after then, which didn't happen. And then we started investing. Butigo was our first investment. I think it was the first week of January we announced it. What do? They focus on fast fashion. They make shoes. Why do they do it? Because Turkey is a great population. People's income levels are rising. They doubled in the last 10 years. Professional women want fancy clothing. So these three young entrepreneurs thought it was great to create an online brand, and we decided to support them. Who are they? This is Berk. He's an engineer, but I think, whoa, that was interesting. There you go. So he's an engineer, but I think he knows more about women's shoes than any man should. But he knows everything about the quality, how they are done, the styles and everything. He's in charge of the whole operation and the quality of the shoes. Gizem, the lady in the middle, was actually trained to be a lawyer in New York. And she started, designing jewelry and selling jewelry. And she finally understood that, law wasn't for her. So she quit her job. She found these two guys, and she joined the team. And this funny guy is Harun. And this is my next investment, actually. He's a geek, actually. He keeps on reading about marketing books and SEO and all that stuff, optimization all day long. That's why he probably looks like this and has a funny haircut. So this was the team that we believed in, and we invested in. This was our first investment. Our second investment that you actually saw today, and Burak just mentioned, was Ballerin. It's an online cosmetics and personal care site. Why did we invest in it? Ahmet gave you some figures. Turkish cosmetics estimated about 2.5 billion a year. Turkish personal care is estimated about 5 billion a year. And you also saw we are spending about a tenth of almost what Europeans are spending on personal care products. Add on top of that the penetration of internet where it is today, how certain things are moving to the internet space. We thought it was a great investment. The team behind it, come on. Can you just change that for me? There you go. The team behind it is Lütfi. He's the founder, actually. He was in Etohum 2010, right? And he was the winner. He was one of the top 15 in 2010. Or was it 2009? 2010. There you go. And he actually had a seed investment and angel investment already. And he accomplished a great work, I think. He knows everything about perfumes and personal care products. He's very good with the whole organization. And he was joined by Ahmet as the CEO of the company. What does Ahmet do? He worked for many years in the US for Visa and MasterCard. Then he moved to London. And then he moved to Turkey. He worked for a big corporation in Turkey. And he decided after a few years that it might not be the best thing for him because he wanted to create something new and build something. So he joined the company. And they are doing great so far. And our third and last investment is, there you go, Arcade Monk. This is a gaming company we announced last week. They make social games. They have 3 games so far. It's called Kebap Dünyası, the Kebab World, Lezzet Dünyası. I guess that would be Tasty World or something. And Sanal OK, which is a Turkish game, again, on the internet social space in Facebook. The team behind it, this big guy is Ömer. Actually, there's one more big guy. Where's the other big guy? There you go. That's the other big guy, Alem Shah. You might know him. They started this company together, Alem Shah, and they were partners before in 4129, as you know. 4129 was acquired by WPP about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And what Ömer did was he left his responsibilities there because I guess games were his passion, and he started, I mean, they together started, but he was in the active chair. They did the Arcade Monk. And the last year, they acquired the Sanal OK team, that's Cumhur and Veys, and the team got very strong. They have about 2 or 3 titles, I think 2, that they will hopefully launch this year. So we said we should support these guys because it was an amazing team. And that's how it all came together. So when you look at these guys, what makes them so unique? Why did we invest in them? You know, I get this question a lot. Why did you invest in these guys? You know, they are different companies, different verticals. Why these teams? They all had great ideas. They saw an industry they knew well or didn't know well. They wanted to change something. They wanted to disrupt something. Like disrupt is a very sexy word we always use, disruptive businesses. And they weren't happy with the status quo. But that doesn't, I mean, this just described 99% of Turkey, right? We are very uncomfortable people who are not happy with what they do or with an industry and complain about something. What was interesting about these people is they made a choice, they changed their life, and they built something. They took a risk. And that's why we actually invested in them, because they showed us that they had other opportunities in their lives. They didn't want that. It wasn't because they had to become entrepreneurs, they chose to become entrepreneurs, and they built successful companies. That's why we wanted to work with them. So, coming back to 212, we are now in Istanbul. The companies we are investing are usually startups. We like to invest in startups in the ICT world, so internet, communications, and technology. We like them to be past beta, so post-beta. We like them to have some kind of a revenue, even if it's $1. So they can show to us that they can create something and they can sell it to clients. And we want them to be long-distance runners, right? Just like a marathon. We want them to dare to train for a marathon and start the marathon. The marathon is about 42 kilometers. And it's very interesting because I like this analogy a lot. In the 30th kilometer, something very interesting happens. It's called the wall. That's when your body completely depletes its glycogen storage. And what it does is it starts burning through your fat storages. In those 2 or 3 minutes, you get excruciating pains, and you start seeing hallucinations. It's very interesting. The more trained you are, the easier it is to break through the wall and get to the other side and complete the marathon. Most people actually quit when they hit the wall in the marathon. So that's how I look at ourselves. We want to have entrepreneurs who start running a marathon. We want to start running with them once they start it. And when we hit the wall together, we want to break through the wall together. So that pretty much sums up my presentation, and now I'm open for your questions. No questions, great.
Yes, no one needs money.
No one needs money. One person, you don't need money.
What about the library? The library behind your entrepreneur?
I read a lot. That's actually our agency. It's Gray. It's Gray's offices. They thought it would be nice and fancy if we had pictures taken in their library, so we took the pictures there. I know it looks more sophisticated that way. You don't want that in our office. We don't have that much space for entrepreneurs.
Talk that again.
So, I mean, it has a couple of reasons. I mean, we both went through New York and Istanbul. We both worked in New York and Istanbul. So 212 being the code for New York and Istanbul, the dialing code for New York and Istanbul. So that's why we chose 212.
And what are your plans for next year? How many?
Well,
companies?
for the next 6 weeks, I'm hoping to finish 3 more investments.
Great. Which one of them?
One of them will be on online retail.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2 will be in internet services. So hopefully, if we don't collapse by then, by the end of March, we will have 6 investments
That's great.
in total. I don't know if it's great, but it's fast.
And when is your fund finished?
We do have some money, so we can make a few couple more investments. I think our investment sizes aren't that big. The maximum we will spend in a company in the first round is about $1 million.
Minimum?
Minimum we don't really have. I mean, but I want to think $250,000 to $300,000. The total we can spend in a company with follow-on rounds is about $5 million. And the reason you want to work with us, I always say this, but it doesn't make sense to many people sometimes. It's not for the first round. The first round is the easy one. The second round is the harder one. And you want us to be there with you on that table when the second round is around, so we can co-invest with a bigger investor, hopefully, and we can keep pushing you on the second round. That's why you want us for the second round.
I mean, how much will you involve in these startups?
Very much. We usually get board seats. Mm-hmm. We always get board seats. Not usually, at least one. Mm-hmm. We do have weekly meetings with each one of them.
Weekly?
Yes.
That's great.
Unless they don't want it. But they usually want it because we are fun to talk to. We have weekly meetings. We usually have a monthly board meeting. But at least a week we meet, and we usually talk on a daily basis.
Great. If you have 10 investments, then you will not have time to go home.
I will hire you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Yes. Questions? Yes.
There is
questions.
one.
There are 2 questions. It's coming. Another microphone is coming to you. All right, it's coming.
Would you invest in competing companies or not?
Would I invest in competing companies? So, do you mean would I invest in one more cosmetics retailer?
Right. Yeah. If you had.
I don't think I have a non-compete. Do I have a non-compete? I probably wouldn't, unless it's something very different. I mean, unless it's something very. I mean, think about this. Would I invest in one more ballerine clone? I wouldn't. Why? Because there's a great team. I get the money already. I support them. I've been supporting them for the last 1 month. We talk on a daily basis. It would be weird for me to give my energy to a different company. But it could be a Birchbox type of company. Maybe, something in the cosmetics. But again, I would probably create the Birchbox clone inside Ballerine. I wouldn't, go invest in one more company. I don't want to say no, but it doesn't seem very likely. It's different with gaming, right?
Right.
Because there are different types of gaming. It's different. We have a social gaming company. I would love to invest in a mobile gaming company. I could integrate them, and they could also benefit from each other's know-how. So I would love to do that. I want to. I mean, when I say integrate, I don't want them to merge or anything like that. But what we see is when these guys come together, which we saw actually last week, we had a photo shoot, and those pictures are from there actually. And when they came together, they started talking. The gaming guys, the cosmetics guys, and the shoes. It was amazing to listen to them. I just sat there and they started talking about different things, their marketing expenses, their shipping expenses. It was interesting. So I am planning to have offsites for these people, actually. So, go away for 2 days, every 6 months or so, just put them together in a room and just talk about what they've been doing in the last 6 months or so. Because what you see is they really benefit from each other's experiences.
Yes. Hi. What percentage of the company do we acquire in return of
We don't acquire.
in return for your investment?
The
range.
We don't acquire companies or any. So what Mr. Fethi Şimşek was saying this morning, that is actually what we do. I mean, it might be different for private equity. We usually give equity investments in the company. What we never want more than 40%. And I would like to have something more than 10 to 15%. I don't want control. I want them to run their ship. So 40%, it's usually in the 20 to 30% range so far. But again, because what we know is, unless the entrepreneur is on the driving seat, right? Unless they see that the company still belongs to them, they will not be motivated to run the company. I would rather have a big company, a small portion of that company. I'm more than happy with that, because neither Numan nor I want to be in a controlling position and go to that company on a daily basis. And I never claim to know about their businesses more than they do. So it's always a minority share.
I believe you only invest in corporations,
Yes.
AŞ
Yes.
only, right?
That's the only
That's
one.
a requirement.
There's no other way, actually.
Okay, when you, this side, when you initially start investing, here, to your left.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So when you initially invest in a company, most of the entrepreneurs usually they suck in planning financial things and revenue model. So is it just an idea that you think that this is going to have a big potential in the future, so that you invest in, or is there any other reasons that?
I mean, this
drive
is
your
a cliche
decision?
that you keep on hearing probably, but it's almost never about the idea. You know, the idea is important, obviously, but it's always about the team. Because you look at these people, you see something different about them, the way they talk, the way they make you feel. And you say, you know what, whatever these guys do will be successful, hopefully. So the idea is great, but they will make something greater of that idea. We don't invest at the idea stage. It has to be implemented. It has to be post-beta. We can't be angel investors. We can't be seed investors. So ideally, they're already around for a couple of months, 6 months or so. They have a website or product or software, whatever, already out there, and they started selling at least to one client. That's the time we enter. But it's, again, never about the idea, always about the people. Because if they want to pivot, I'm more than happy in a couple of months. If they say, you know what, this wasn't the right idea, we still have the money, we want to pivot, I'm more than happy to support that if it's for the right reasons.
You just said that you don't invest in seed funds. You mentioned that at the beginning of 212, the idea was an accelerator, maybe, Y Combinator. So let's try to combine them both. Why not an accelerator? And if there was one, outside of 212, how would that affect your pipeline?
Well, if there was one, it would help us a lot, because obviously our biggest challenge in Turkey is the pipeline and deal sourcing so far. I think we saw more than 150 companies in the last 18 months, actually. I mean, yesterday, Thursday, before I flew here, we saw 3 companies. We keep on seeing companies, but only a very few of them we can actually start negotiating something with. I wouldn't be able to run an accelerator because, you know, I don't have the time to give to those companies, to one-to-one time that you have to dedicate with those companies. We do already work with incubation centers. We do talk to Burak on a frequent basis. We do talk to Özyeğin University on a frequent basis. We go to ODTÜ, İTÜ on a very frequent basis. Some other ones are about to come up in Turkey. We would love to work with them. And working with them doesn't necessarily mean that they have a company that we would invest in. I would love to just go to talk to them. Even if the companies are not suitable for us, we still help them and coach them. So we are more than happy to work with anyone who would like to listen to us.
Hi. Hi, Ali. I want to give a little bit of background information with him. When we started searching for funds at our startup in Social Wire, he was one of the 2 guys with Sinafa who told us not to get an investment in Turkey. Yeah, we didn't, besides the friends and family. And we ended up getting it in San Francisco with First Round Capital and other people. But the question I want to ask is, I see brilliant tech startups here, as we were once. And as a tech startup, it's very hard to start, and it's very hard to commercialize it. And I know Numan is one of the few investors that has a tech background. what do you recommend for these people who have a wonderful technology but not very expert of how to sell it or how to get funds for it?
Well, they can always, I mean, if that's the main weakness they have, i.e. how to commercialize it, how to find financing for it, I think there are enough resources in Turkey now. And the worst that they can, I mean, not the worst, one of the things that they can do is they can go to Burak, right? So you should go to Burak. But I think there are many helps. There are small M&A boutiques that help entrepreneurs now. There are people who would love to work with you for a small portion of your company, dedicate your time. And if you can't find those people, you can come to us. What we can do is we can start working with you and find those people for you, even if you don't invest in you. So if you have a great idea, if you have a really great idea, do email us. We will definitely get back to you in less than 36 hours. And we will try to help you. Or we will tell you right up front that this idea is not a good one. You shouldn't pursue it.
That's what happened with us, so I really recommend you mailing these guys. They will give you their honest opinion on that.
Thank you.
No more questions?
One. Hey, it's Burak. I need to know that, I mean, do you have a plan? Do you have a game plan on your mind? Or are you just looking for opportunities? I mean, are you fetching some pieces of the puzzle in your mind? Or just looking for the good companies?
I have a grand plan in my mind. You know, I have this, I'm going to take over the world.
No, are you trying to,
no, we
complete
do actually,
something?
No, actually, we do have a plan. What is that? It's very interesting because it's a very good question you're asking, because most of the people on the entrepreneurial side don't understand this. But I mean, our plan is we have a certain amount of money, right? And we need to allocate that in a smart way. We need to diversify. So we have what we call a portfolio model. So when I invest in you, let's say I give you $1 million. What I do is I write a big business plan. Even if you don't have one, I still write my own. It just outlines my investment thesis, why I'm investing in you. And let's say I'm giving you $1 million. I also put in that plan how much more I'm going to give you in what time frame. So let's say I give you $1 million and I foresee that in the next 24 months I'm going to give you $2 million more. So I block that $3 million for you right away. So we have a great plan, great financial model behind it. It's not just numbers. It also looks at industries, what sectors we are looking at, what our exposure is in each industry, and because we need to maximize our returns. That's why, actually, to come back to the other question, it would be hard for us to justify one more investment in a competitor of one of our investments. But we do have a plan. I mean, because we need to be successful as well. This is our first fund, by the way. So if this fund doesn't go well, I don't have a second fund to raise, right? So I need to be extra careful about the investments I make. And we really do actually spend a lot of time with that portfolio model, how we will invest that money, and how we will diversify our investment.
So this is your first fund and one of the very first funds in Turkey. So there are not so many funds that you can co-invest with. Well, so is that a big problem?
Well, in the first round, it doesn't really matter if I co-invest, because it's a small amount. It's already in my business plan. So I have no problem being the first risk taker with an opportunity. And the second, I mean, we have people here right now from different VCs and venture capital houses. So I would love to co-invest with any of them. We do talk to most of them already. I mean, we've been talking to most of them for the last 1 year. They've been supporting us because what they say is, when you look at an international VC, a big, large size one, the minimum amounts that they will invest maybe are 5 million above usually, right? So it's very hard for a startup to get that money usually. And I'm assuming that they feel more comfortable with a Turkey-based VC with 2 Turks working for it, took a risk, invested in these guys, are spending time with these guys, and I think it will be easier for them to co-invest in the second round. That's what I said. You don't want us for the first one. We'll be there for you for the second one. Because what happens is, what you are doing is you get 2 guys who work for you for free, who are bankers, who've been on that table before, and they start fighting for you to get that second round. That's what you're actually getting. You don't just get money. You actually get the bankers who work for you for the second round. That's it, I guess. No, one more.
What's your exit strategy and timeline? And
why exit? It's beautiful.
it's an investment, right? So
it's an investment, so we need to exit. That's a good question. Obviously, you guys do know we need to exit because that's the only time we get a return. So I can turn back to my investor and say, here are the profits I made for you. Our exit is usually planned for the next after the first investment. We usually plan 5 years or so for the exit. The strategy so far, I mean, actually, it's one of the biggest challenges in Turkey. I don't know if you were here to listen to Sina yesterday. So it really helped us actually with the fund, with the raising of the fund, that Gidiyor, Marcafoni, and Trendyol happened. Until then, it was very hard for us to say, you know, there are great investment opportunities in Turkey. Once those three happened, it was very easy for us. We could say, here are success stories. These guys exited or almost exited to large players. So hopefully it will be a trade sale or an IPO. IPO market is very small in Turkey for startups. But as you know, we have this new GIP. So I guess it's the upcoming industries, technology, whatever, upcoming industries, sectors market. So hopefully one of our companies will go public there. I would love that. And in the worst case, if everything is going well, if the entrepreneur is happy, but we need to get out, maybe they will acquire our shares. So we'll all be happy. But time will show how things will turn around in 5 years, where Turkey will be, where the financial markets will be. Obviously, there are a lot of different determinants to that question. But we are hopeful.
Is it okay if I get it first? Hi, I'm John from, I live in Vienna, my parents from Turkey, obviously. Like, for me it's very, my parents are from Turkey.
Oh, okay, good.
I live in Vienna, so for me it's quite interesting to be here and see what's going on in the startup scene and to see the differences between Austria and Germany and Turkey in the startups. Like, my first question is, from your experience in the US and abroad, where do you see the main differences between the startups that are coming now in Turkey and the ones that you've seen from your international experience? And the second thing be, what would you advise startups in Turkey now to do differently or to focus on? Just your opinion, your personal opinion on it.
Sure. The startups in Turkey have a tough challenge ahead of them, I think. Because obviously it's a difficult economy, it's a growing economy, it's an interesting geography that we live in. The financing sources, even though we are here, are not enough. So there are many challenges that they face that a startup in the US don't even think about. There's an abundance of capital in the US, or I would say even in Europe still, for the right idea. But here, it's much harder for a startup to sell that idea. Yesterday, Sina again mentioned, if Twitter was launched in Turkey, would it be funded? That's a very interesting question, because I've been asking myself that same question. Would I fund Twitter? And the answer is not always yes, actually. So I think since there's a lack of capital still in Turkey, we are very risk averse. So we only invest in startups where we really, really feel comfortable. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, in Turkey versus the competitors in the US. From the creativity side, from knowledge side, I don't think we lack anything. I think we are more creative than the Europeans and the Americans for sure. What we don't have, I guess, is the volume of entrepreneurs that you can look up to. That's the other challenge. I think the more exits we have, the more successful people you start seeing in the news, like Yemek Sepeti, Gitti Gidiyor, Sina Afra. The more you see of them, I think more and more startups will start actually, getting the energy from them. So that's the other challenge. But I think those wheels are turning already in Turkey. And your second question was, what do I... in industry-wise, or... Okay, what they don't think about, the biggest challenge they have, one of the biggest challenges they have, is they still focus on the idea. They don't focus enough on their teams. They usually come to us, if it's let's say, a simple one. If it's an e-retailer idea, they usually have an idea. They outsource their website to someone else. They don't really feel good about it, but what they can do. So they don't really focus on building the team as much as they should. I think they should start focusing on the team. They should not worry about the money. I know this kind of contradicts what I said before, but if they have the idea, if it's something impressive, they will find money. It will be us, it will be Galata Business Angels, and you know, some of the people here will gladly invest in them. I think sometimes we are worried far too much about getting funded, which is very normal in this neighborhood of countries, because it's a very cyclical economy. Nothing is the same every day. And they should stop being worried about money. They should do very good financial planning. What we also see is they come to us and they ask for 150,000 lira, which is fine. But you know, it's only for 3 months usually, or they don't think for a year usually. They should do their financial planning better, I think. That's the other suggestion I would give them. But again, just to reiterate, they should not worry about the money. If they have the idea, if they have the team, they will get funded in Turkey at this point. I don't see any problem anyone getting funded in Turkey if they have all those stones set in place.
I have a question actually. Here.
Oh, yeah.
You said you have been talking about the investors for the last 18 months for raising the funds. I'd like to ask, what kind of investors are you looking for? I'd like to ask from the other side, because I'd like to ask this question because I know some people from conventional industries, they have huge amounts of money, and now they see the importance of internet. They see Markofoni, Trendyol, and they see that okay, if in 1 year, 2 years, these companies can make huge amounts of money for which they did this same amount of money in 20 years, they would like to invest in internet, and they have money. And I mean, some people also approach to me. They know I'm working in internet, and hey, I have this money. I would like to invest in that. I mean, would you consider this kind of people as your investors? What do you think about it?
Well, we can't raise money in Turkey. Our investors are international. That's one challenge we have. It's mostly high net worth individuals. We did try our luck with some institutions. It didn't work out for this one. For the next one, it will be hopefully bigger, and institutions will come in. But we are open for investors who want to, you know, come and talk to us. We can try to help them. But it's the type of investor who should understand what VC investing is, because what we see is I mean, that's why it took us 18 months, right? In Turkey, you have a lot of people who have access to money, but they are really used to making easy profits with that money. You know, just living in the bank gives you some decent profits, or just buying real estate. In the last few years, we saw a great real estate boom, so they made great amounts of money with no risk. A VC, an investor into a VC fund should know that they can lose all that money, and they should be okay with that. I'm not saying that we will lose that money, but they should be comfortable with that concept. So which means they should be big enough and they should be diversified enough, right? They shouldn't put their whole nest egg in a VC fund. They should have, you know, real estate investments already. They should have gold, whatever investment. They should have some money in the bank, and then they should consider VCs as an alternative investment. And we don't. I mean, and this actually takes a very sophisticated investor, and that's the type of investor you don't see in Turkey often. They don't feel very comfortable with the notion of losing money.
I have another question for you. You meant two questions, actually. One would be just on the financing side. You said yourself you don't want to be the first one around, so you leave that to the business angels, I guess. And I don't know.
Or friends and family, right?
To what extent that ecosystem is developed nowadays, but it would be curious to learn about it. But after you, is there, in your experience, or if there is no experience yet in your young portfolio, in your thesis, who is going to take up the stick after you once you've spent the 5 million?
Well, we will probably carry the stick together. I do talk to...
Is there already a sort of a nascent group of
you are
investors? Here? Me? No. I'm actually in the same turf as you are.
That's lovely. So we do have potential co-investors that we're already talking to. It's very early for us to invest with them, because obviously we spent our money in the last 1 month. We made 3 investments in the last 1 month. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be talking to them very closely, because most of our companies will be raising their second funding in the 4th quarter of 2012, I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. We've been talking to them for a while now, some in Europe, some in the US. They have great interest in Turkey. Some of them already have invested in Turkey already. And again, I think they like the idea of having a local partner. It gives them more comfort, I think, that someone local, someone working in Turkey is taking a risk with these guys. But we do see great interest. On the financing side, you're right. We don't get involved with the seed or angel level. But there are I think two angel groups now in Turkey. Galata Business Angels holds a meeting once a month. It's a very easy application process. You apply and you come and you talk to. Actually, we are also in the Galata Business Angels, so we have that business angel hat as well. So again, if it's the right idea, if it's the right team, I don't see any problem with getting funded, assuming it fits our portfolio model. Coming back to that.
Yeah. The second question, unrelated, is maybe a bit provocative, but if I'm here for the first time, and I appreciate it very much. Maybe I can expand on this a bit more on the panel. But you could get the false impression, whether it's based on your portfolio or whether it's on the basis of the startups that have pitched today, that again, there's a lot of copycats. Now, no offense taken, please, because my home country is the king of copycats, that is Germany. So what I would be curious about is 2 things. One is, there's nothing wrong about copycatting. Is there anything that is so specific in the Turkish market that you can still create barriers to entrance?
I believe so.
And the second one is, next to e-commerce front-end businesses, most of them direct to consumer, is there technology or say technology ideas that are more pervasive, that are different, that are more pervasive essentially, that are creating new technology ideas, entrepreneurs that do that?
For e-commerce or for?
Generally, and maybe specifically for e-commerce. One of the things I was missing, I'm not sure, is not the right word, but it's to say, well, when you have such a bullish environment about e-commerce, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built around, whether this is payment, whether this is advertising, businesses or technologies. I haven't heard or seen any of those. Now, that's maybe a pure coincidence. Is that not there yet, or is it already all there and fully funded?
The infrastructure is there in Turkey. I think it's very well developed. The e-commerce, the logistics, the payment systems, I think we are there. Even mobile payments, we are there. You're right, some of them are copycats. But I don't think you can call them copycats, because the way they implement their idea is very different usually because of the geography alone, or the funding size, or the team, then the way they do it. I mean, if you take an example of Butigo, right? There is a shoe dazzle in the US. It looks kind of similar to what Butigo does, fast fashion, shoes. But when you look deep in the business models, they're totally different. The subscription model doesn't really work in Turkey. We don't import our shoes from China. We don't have a celebrity yet. So it's very different, actually, the way they're implemented. The ideas are similar. And we actually have in this room a couple of copycats, but the way they implement it, the way they are, working out the difficulties, leads them to different businesses, I think. What we see, we do see actually very unique companies more and more, especially in the software and ERP side. We do have one company. We've been talking to them for a year and a half so far. We haven't invested yet, obviously, because the fund is just raised, but we've been having weekly meetings with them for the last year and a half. And what they do is, it's a software as a service platform. They have a client in the US already. They are very unique. And you see more and more companies like that. So hopefully we will have more of them. We do need more of them. But we also need, I think, substantial retailers who will change the ecosystem in Turkey. And I do believe in the Turkish entrepreneur, and I see some very promising people in this room. Good question. We don't actually source investments. They come to us. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I've done something without knowing I was doing it, right? When I met Burak in 2008, end of 2008, I think it was, I kind of came into the community. It's a small community that grew much larger than it was before. So people kind of know us already. They know Numan, they know me, they know we've been around for the last 2 years, they know we are fun guys to talk to, they know we are very approachable. So we kind of built that brand already, I think. So we don't really advertise anymore. Not that we were before. We just enjoy what we're doing. We do still, though, obviously work with Etohum very closely. We do talk to the universities a lot. Is that sourcing? Yes, it is. But none of our deals, other than budgeting was actually an Etohum company, came through any sourcing activity. They found us. And actually, we do get probably two or three emails a day through our website saying, I saw your website, you are great, can I come and talk to you? We always reply, always, which is a very unusual thing in Turkey, I think, because people for some reason are too busy or too important to reply to the email that they receive. We always reply, even if it's a negative answer, we still reply, and I think that's how we have built a brand already. So we don't really go out there, put up advertising saying come to us yet. But I do hear about new VCs coming up in Turkey. It will be great because we will love to beat competition. Okay, let's go drink, right?